You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
This week on Myopia Defend Your Childhood. Myopia Defend Your Childhood is so named because I believe we are short-sighted on the things we watched as kids. So every week we watch a movie that one of the panelists grew up watching and see if they hold up, from comedy to cartoons or to action. And for this season, the last Thursday of each month, we're doing a TV show in our Myopia Mornings segments. We watch Saturday morning cartoons and afternoon classics. So find us on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. How will you stand when we put your past on trial? Myopia Defend Your Childhood is a member of the ESO Network and produced by Dude Letter Podcasting.
Hello, and welcome again to the Monster Sci-Fi Show Podcast. I am your host, the Monster, back, albeit tired, to try to do another podcast for this week. So, I did promise last week I will be talking about the Super Bowl TV commercials, so that will be the main topic. For some reason, and it's not that I didn't try, I could not find two other big topics to talk about in addition to the sci-fi news that I normally do. And it's been a very rough week since me being a librarian. I had moved my young adult section and graphic novels and mangas from one section that I was in at the library to another section because of an ongoing AC project. So basically, I had to move my stuff into kids and set up shop there. So it's been a very, not a lengthy process, but physically challenging for this past week. And since I was off yesterday, I did a bonus 200th episode for the Monster Sci-Fi Show, in which it will be coming out very soon. I'm not sure about the date yet, but I'm thinking around the 22nd of this month. You'll get to see that. And then, of course, I had to record the 200th episode, which it was going to be originally this coming Friday, or next Friday, but it's been, my day off has been changed to this Tuesday. So it's a lot quicker than I expected. So between all of that and... you can hear it's quite windy. So between all of that, me doing the video yesterday, and I did a trailer promo for that 200th episode. So you can see that on my Facebook page. You can see briefly on Instagram. You can also see the full version on that on YouTube. So you'll get to see more of me than you probably would want to have seen in the first place, because I normally just do audio. I don't do video, and if I do, that's the one I do at work with the teens. So again, this is not going to be a very long podcast, but I do have a lot of quick tidbit news that I want to talk about. Okay, so the first quick piece of news is that Black Widow looks like it's going to be filming sometime this month, if not next month, starting in the UK. So we're going to get finally a Black Widow movie. So we are going to get the Red Sparrow movie that we've been wanting, which is the reverse of the Black Widow movie that should have been the Red Sparrow. But in any case, I'm glad that that's finally happened. Scarlett Johansson is definitely worthy of her own movie as Black Widow. We also have news about Legion, which I have not finished season 1. But the good news-ish is that it's going to be ending at the end of season 3, which was the game plan all along. So that will be coming to a close. So at least when I get to finish that, I can at least have a definite ending. Because from what I read was that basically that this was always a game plan to have a beginning, a middle, and of course the end part. So I'm glad that that's a smart move, because there have been plenty of TV series in which it goes on way too long and loses its focus that initially drew people in the first place. Kind of like this next news item, which is that Simpsons have been renewed for a 31st and 32nd season. Seriously, guys, when was the last time you saw a Simpsons episode? I used to love it back when it was in the 80s. But seriously, it lost a lot of punch in the past couple of decades, and I can't believe it's been so long ago that we're still talking about this. And the fact that it's still going on, and I think that's the problem. There was nothing for me that I used to love as a fan that I can kind of get back into. And yes, it should continue if the ratings are there, and obviously Fox thinks that it's worth its time and money to have the show still on the air, but this is not the show that I used to love. So unfortunately, that's the sad state of affairs right now. And what else do we have? We also have the fact that Tom Hiddleston is finally going to be doing a Loki TV series for Disney Plus, which is their streaming service, so that has been definitely confirmed. The next piece supposedly is going to be the Scarlet Witch, but how are they going to do a Loki series? Obviously, if you believe the Avengers Infinity War, that he had died. So you could do a tongue-in-cheek version of Loki looking back at his life leading up to that point. So it could be basically kind of like the Wonder Years, in which, you know, he kind of like, so you must be asking yourself, why am I in the chokehold by Thanos? You want to know how I got here. And then he starts off day one, you know, talking about his whole life and having a younger version of Loki and Thor and having them grow up over the years. So it'll be like Loki's Wonder Years. So it could work. I'm just curious to see which direction they'll go in, but sure, I'll go with it. Now, the other piece of news is that World War Z 2 is on hold. Which, if you saw the first one, I enjoyed the first one tremendously. I think it was fantastic, and having a hard time trying to adapt World War Z because of the way the storytelling was done. Well, this was the events of that account, because everything was told in first person about what was going on, but we saw that whole fallout of what had happened and led up to that point. So the survivors of the book talked about those events. So the movie showcased those events. But the problem lies that they had to do massive reshoots, including a whole new ending. So luckily it was able to make a turnaround, so they didn't want to create the exact same problem. But they are in pre-production, and it's now on halt because they have no budget. And I'm like, how can you have no idea of how much your Electric Boogaloo is going to go into your second movie? You should know that X amount of dollars has to be for my Electric Boogaloo. Why would you go into production or even pre-production without that? I mean, it makes no sense. But, you know, those are zombies. And coming up in March, finally, it's going to be Batman's turn to be 1000th in his comics. So Superman did it a year or two back. Now it's Batman's turn. And I think supposedly Bane is coming back once more. So, not that I don't mind having Bane, but I'm like, I would have thought maybe for 1000th episode, you know, of this comic book, do something a little bit more engaging. I don't know. It's just me. Alright, I think that's pretty much it. Oh, Shazam! I forgot to mention this. So the on again, off again are we going to get a Superman cameo? And it looks like, yes, we are going to get one, but not really Henry Cavill. So I'm kind of hoping that's just to throw us off the course and kind of like, set the expectation really low that no, we're not getting him. Or you'll see like a picture of him in the background. From what I'm reading, and I don't want to give away what that is, I'm like, I'm hoping we do get Henry at the end. I'm really hoping. So it's not like I'm not going to watch this movie if there's no Henry, but he is part of DC now. So let's bring him into the fold at the very least. I mean, Ben Affleck did it in Suicide Squad. That was great to see him in that little cameo. So let's bring Superman into the fold. He deserves at least that. I mean, you brought him out back from the dead. Let him have fun. Alright. So I'm just going to go literally straight into the Super Bowl stuff, because I really want to do very little editing today. And again, I'm just really super tired. So I got to wake up, sadly, at 6:30 because I took a nap about 5, and I was hoping to get up at by 6 to start watching the Super Bowl, which, for all intents and purposes, was the worst. And now this being a week from when this aired, it's already been done. It's, okay, Patriots, you won again for the 6th time. Huzzah. Good for you. But overall, the tone of the commercials, like every year there seems to be, like when the internet started in the early 2000s, there was a lot of .com businesses that just were like nothing but, pets.com or whatever you have it. It was all about the new e-commerce surge. And then, of course, over the years, things have changed. You have the fallout of those businesses, or you have more reflective tones and to talk about, what's going on in the country. Not that had happened in this season, but it was just more about more celebrities than I thought would be necessary. I mean, the whole idea of having the Super Bowl, or at least having the commercials in the Super Bowl, in which why are the ads so damn expensive, is that you're going to get a whole bunch of eyes for your product while watching the Super Bowl. So you kind of have to bring out your big guns. But I didn't think bringing out the big guns meant like bring out a whole lot of, like Harrison Ford was in an Amazon commercial. Steve Carell doing for Pepsi, or Big Lebowski and Sarah Jessica Parker, Jeff Bridges, throwing all in there, doing a beer commercial for characters that they did. And it just seems really, I kind of liked it, but it was just not something that I would have thought that that's what I would have wanted. Like, I want to be entertained. I look forward to the commercials more so than the Super Bowl, because as the Super Bowl proved, it was god-awful. So let's just start off with stuff I did not like. The TurboTax RoboChild was super creepy, because if you know the story, or the quick synopsis, was that this guy builds an artificial life form as a child who's a robot, and he's mechanical, but he has kind of like a doll's face to emulate not real emotions, but be able to look like he's talking. He wants to grow up to be a TurboTax accountant, a live accountant, so he can do that. But the people that the guy was friends with saying, no, you can't be that, because dealing with emotions is too complex. And to prove that point, and it's like, he says, I am sad, and then he starts laughing, which is like a weird, creepy laugh. And I'm like, it's hard enough that you have to do taxes. It's another thing to watch that commercial and then be reminded that you still have to do taxes. So The other commercial that I thought was okay, the M&Ms with I was gonna say Christina Aguilera. It's not Christina Aguilera. It's Christina Applegate, in which she's the mom to, I guess, the M&Ms, and like with many parents who get frustrated at their children, especially when they're driving, you know, she threatens them by eating them alive, and then turn around and you see them all stuck into a bar. It was, again, initially kind of cute, but I'm like, I thought it was kind of wasted. Normally M&M come up with a little bit more funnier ideas. I didn't think that was a winner altogether. The Turkish Airlines. This one was really confounding me because this was, quote unquote, a movie or a thing that Ridley Scott directed. And it looks like an espionage movie set in Europe, and then you had to watch the rest of that thing he did online. And I'm like, I never felt like I needed to watch it because it was just all over the place. It never felt like a thing like when you had the 1984 campaign of the Mac computer that Ridley Scott did, in which it was a take on 1984, and there was this female athlete launching like a hammer against the screen that was controlling all these people, hence the Big Brothers thing, and blowing away the idea that now we have the supercomputer, which is the Mac computer. Fantastic. That's the kind of stuff that I expect. That Turkish airline promo was complete garbage. Never thought I would say that about Ridley's work. Even the stuff that I didn't like as much, I never thought it would be that poorly done. Again, poorly executed. Oh, the last one. I think this is probably going to be the winner for me. That, what were they thinking? Or at least, maybe that was not the time to do this. Was the product called Devour. So it's referred to as food porn, in which this guy is heating up macaroni and cheese by Devour. And it seemed like it was a marital issue substituted for food. And it was not the thing that I would have wanted to see at that time, considering I'm watching this with my family. And I'm like, that's any other time I would think it's clever, but that's not the time to be that clever with food porn, or put it in that context during prime time family viewing. Alright, so those are the ones I hated the most. There were a couple of exceptions, but before I do that, let me talk about a couple of trailers that I was surprised by. And I was thinking in my head, I'm going to mess this up and call it Calvin and Hobbes, but it's Hobbs and Shaw, which are the guys from Fast and Furious. So they're having their own spin-off movie. So you can leave Vin Diesel out of the whole picture and just still do another side mission of Fast and Furious without the main player. So the idea between these two is that they have animosity and they've never liked each other, but they have to work together in order to save the world. Now, the whole premise with Idris Elba being super powered now, I think it's kind of ludicrous and ridiculous, but putting that aside, this seemed like a normal Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson over-the-top action sequences, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. But the very end, and this is where it differs from the TV, is that the TV version, the villain escapes with the girl on his back out a window of a building, and then Hobbs, I'm assuming that's Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, is about to jump out the window, but he uses a rope to go down, and Shaw takes an outside elevator. So as Hobbs is beating up the guys, as he's falling, he grabs one and he's swinging onto the rope, and swings up to the elevator, bashing the bad guy's head into the elevator, and as in slow-mo swinging it back out, he says the word F you, which I laughed out loud hysterically, because up to that point I'm like, and then that one moment, fantastic. Whereas in the TV spot, completely cut that part out, and that was the punchline that they left out. They could have just been like with the F, and just have that being the mouth part, and then cut that part out. But it was just smashed to the window of the elevator, and that was it. So that made for that trailer on TV to be very boring. Luckily, I saw this beforehand, and again, I think I saw this on the Saturday before and loved it. So I thought I would like it again. No, they cut that whole part out. So that's unfortunately. But if you watch the trailer on YouTube, do yourself a favor or just watch it, because it is quite funny. The other thing is that I missed the Endgame, the Avengers Endgame trailer, because it came out between 6 and 6:30, so when I woke up at 6:30, that already aired, and that was only 30 seconds. But in this trailer, you see Tony again with Nebula. So, again, and I know everyone's coming back, but you want to have a moment in which this could be Tony's end. But then there's a shot of him and Nebula, which it was already in my head anyway, because she survived of the snap, and so did Tony. So obviously they were working together, and maybe he is just, I don't know, one part of the ship and she's in another part of the ship, and this one shot shows that they're still on the ship but just working together on something. Or it could be, no, whatever they did not work and they are resigned to die in space. That could be it too. I just thought that could have been left out. Everything else, kind of like the aftermath of what has happened, like you see the Statue of Liberty now crowded with all these ships around its dock, which is a nice imagery of, the events leading up to that, or after the fall of, or the events of the snap. Kind of nice to look at the bigger picture, because that's the other thing too, is that, well, how does this affect the planet, or what happened? Just have people's reactions to that situation, I think, is even more evocative, rather than showing that the heroes that they faced Thanos are in mourning because they failed. So, and it was not very long either. It was just a quick 30-second spot. And I've been looking on the internet saying that there's also supposedly, like they did in the Captain America Civil War, space for another hero that seems to have been digitally erased. So some are speculating that it could be Captain Marvel that's in that spot. Could be something else that we've never seen. Who knows? But we have a couple of months still to go. But I'm glad that the trailer didn't go any further than 30 seconds, because again, you really want to kind of have an idea what's going on or what to expect, but don't know what is going to happen or to expect, so to speak. And that was pretty much it. I mean, even though there was a Captain Marvel trailer again, I didn't really think of it much. But let's move on to the actual commercials that I did like. Last year, the Bud Light Dilly Dilly was my favorite thing that I loved throughout the whole NFL season, and even got a soda can cooler with the Dilly Dilly logo on it, because I don't drink beer, but I still like, it's very catchy, and it's very fun to kind of, whatever someone says that's happy or whatever, you go Dilly Dilly. And of course, once that faded, I'm the only one that still goes Dilly Dilly every once in a while. But they kind of captured that spirit in which they were going after other beer companies because of the corn syrup issue, which I'm like, wow, they're really digging at other companies. Like, at least our product is natural. And so a lot of people who didn't like the corn syrup problem or the issue or the other companies getting a dig at, it's all about making noise, so to speak, for your product. But I think the best crossover, which I was not expecting, was that it was a normal Bud Light commercial in which they were having a joust, and the Blue Knight got knocked off his horse, and the other knight that was coming along, and I could have sworn I did not hear this, but as he's standing over the Blue Knight, he puts his hand on the helmet, but then the guy who says dilly dilly starts screaming. So again, I didn't hear any kind of noise, but he started screaming. And then all of a sudden, a dragon appears and starts burning the place down. So that was the Game of Thrones crossover, or at least a promo for Game of Thrones. Which, that was brilliant. That's the kind of commercial that you want to see for a Super Bowl and you want to be talking about. So, again, I don't have a need or like to drink beer, but I enjoy the hell out of that commercial because I was super entertained. And even though I'm behind on Game of Thrones, referencing the dragon and the fire and all that was fantastic. So I never saw that coming and was so pleasantly surprised by that. That was the best commercial for the whole Super Bowl. So there were some kind of cute likes, like Chance the Rapper doing a thing for Doritos, and when she starts envisioning himself like with the Backstreet Boys. But other than that, it was kind of like, well, that's it. That was pretty much it. Oh, except for the NFL 100th anniversary. I wind up like, oh my god, Franco Harris is in this, and Deion Sanders, and it's like, I started to remember all these old football players that were in the commercial, and it turned out to be a lot more fun than I expected, because it just seemed like, it was like a self-parody, but I'm like, I remember all these heroes that I used to watch growing up when I lived in New York, watching football with my dad. My stepfather, but he's my dad. So it was nice to kind of go back to those moments and remember the things that they did. So aside from that, the other thing too is just a notable, a memorable mention is Michael Bublé for Bubbly. It's carbonated water that has flavor added to it, but they kept calling it Bublé, not Bubbly, and kept using his name as Bubbly, not Bublé. So the product I've had once, and it's god awful. The commercial, on the other hand, is funny as hell. So it definitely is a good commercial, and it's surprising that he's able to poke fun at himself. So definitely, I'll give him points on that. Other than that, I was done with the Super Bowl long time before that was even over. But I suffered through those 3/4 of the show before something happened. And don't get me started with the Adam Levine halftime show and the lack of SpongeBob doing Sweet Victory. I was kind of like hoping like they would do it, and they were about to, and then they cut it right before they do this. They throw in, I forgot the guy's name, the other rapper who comes down and does his bits. And I'm like, seriously, you could have saved some money, some time by having that performance done during the halftime. I would have had the best time hearing Sweet Victory rather than hearing Adam Levine. And not to knock his music, but that was probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen for a halftime show. Very lackluster. Very disappointed overall with the whole Super Bowl. So, again, Patriots, congratulations, but for God's sakes, give someone else a chance. Let someone else have some fun. because this was not fun. So, on that note, that's going to be the end of my show. So remember, I'm going to be having a bonus 200th episode of my podcast, which is going to be video. And then I will have the 200th podcast of that coming up, hopefully on the Friday on the 22nd. And just keep an eye out and an ear for those two to be released. So you can follow me on the various social networks. I have a lot of cool pictures that you can watch or you can see on my Instagram page, including the trailers for the promo for my video podcast trailer. So the bonus stuff. So a lot of good stuff coming up. So again, you can always email me at monsterscifishow@gmail.com. Follow me on the various social networks. Thank you for listening to me and to the Monster Sci-Fi Show Podcast. It's sci-fi from a certain point of view. Good night.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.